I'm here today to share with you about my organization, which is Opportunity Virginia. I've been in this role for just about 2.5 months right now. Before that, I had limited experience around opportunity zones specifically. I'd been working with startups and small businesses around, especially PPP, both applications and forgiveness, and general small business support and investor preparedness. So I've had a lot to learn, and I'm really excited to be a part of this community because I think that we can all gain a lot from each other. So again, we are Opportunity Virginia, and that is a Virginia Community Capital, which is a community development financial institution. And if you don't know anything about CDFIs, I think Chris and I were gonna plan something to get someone from my institution to talk more about CDFIs and the potential role they can have around making OZ deals work. And also Locus, which is an impact investing group, a national impact investing group. We're pretty young, only a couple years old. And this idea of Opportunity Virginia came out of just recognizing a need in the marketplace. So first, just a review of Virginia, because I know a lot of you are all over the country, specifically about our opportunity zones. We have 212. 73% are non-metro, and this is important to us because this is our focus, is the non-metro, rural, harder to make deals happen sorts of places. And there's a ton of people, jobs, and businesses located in this. And this is basically the area across the state that I am responsible for keeping track of and monitoring and trying to assist in. So I'm open to hearing about any projects that could happen in the state of Virginia, but that means the projects would have to be state-based, but working with partners across the country or working with investors across the country, I'm happy to do that as well. So Virginia and others when it makes sense. So again, who we are is we are really mission focused. So we're trying to help create these positive community impact investments using the Opportunity Zone incentive. And we're trying to level the playing field in terms of who has access to resources around making these deals happen. Because of course, there's some situations where it's really easy to get OZ funds put together and funded. And we think of this in sort of the case for our OZ market, that we're going to be focusing on these higher effort type projects. The lower effort ones are the ones we see in the news a lot, the urban centric, real estate focused, really high returns. It's a no-brainer for investors, ready to go, experienced project sponsors. And in a lot of cases, sometimes these do have social impact, but they don't necessarily always. And what we work around is in metropolitan, suburban, and rural. We focus on health, jobs, housing, and education, also environmental, that should be included as well. And sometimes the deals we look at are at or below market rate return, and that makes it more difficult to find the right type of investor, but we've been able to assist in several projects where that has been the case. And they often require more hands-on assistance. A lot of time it's first-time project sponsors. And in general, what we love to see is when there's a high community alignment. So economic developers, local folks that want to see this happen, not just in terms of the investment, but also in the planning. So our partners here are our main ones are the Virginia state government, as well as the Virginia Department of Housing and the Department of Housing and Community Development, in addition to obviously Virginia Community Capital and Locus, which I already mentioned. So we're grant funded. This year is funded by DHCP, and we'll see what happens next year. But basically, this is what we do. We are collecting an inventory of potential projects, trying to understand what they look like, what stage they're in, how much help they need, what sorts of support we can offer, or who we can connect them with. And we'll go through, we'll help make sure that they're getting as investor ready as possible, understanding financial models, pitch decks, whatever it might be. And then we're also working on the other side. We're trying to create a potential pool of investors from whatever that might look like. And we talk a lot about how an OZ investor is, there's no such thing as a typical OZ investor. It can be a wide market depending on the project and the size of fund we're trying to raise, or the minimum input. It can create a really different strategy. So what we basically have is we're set up this market so I get approached by people on both sides of of the OZ deal. And ideally, they can contact me in a close enough space that I can then get them in touch with one another and help see investment happen. Sometimes we have to do a bit more directed work, especially on regional, lower return type projects, and really connecting with people in the region. So that's where our partner, Virginia Community Capital, really is crucial, because they have deep roots in a lot of these communities, and they know the types of people who can help make things like this happen. Additionally, we help with these tools. We make introductions, we do matching, and we track and report on impact and capital trends. So we also, in terms of Virginia activity, there's plenty of big stories coming out around opportunity zones. And we do a little bit of work with groups like this, these large funds. And that's usually when we have outreach from investors, and they say something like, I've got this amount of capital gains, can you help me find a project that can invest? And then depending on their interest, if it's purely return, if they want to stay local, we can direct them to different activity throughout the state. And this is a little bit outdated. This is our pipeline at the beginning of 2021. And we had a lot of things coming in, 266, but only 5 of them were investor ready for the second year of the project. So there's a lot of work that is going in, and I think that's generally what they found in the first years of the project. They were hoping to develop a more robust pipeline, and they were thinking they would have to do a lot more work in terms of finding investors, but it turned out to be the opposite, that finding investors was often easier as long as the project was ready. And that can be more difficult with certain projects, but overall, we realized we had to put a lot more work in the project development side. This is just a map showing generally where we're seeing people reach out to us from. And so it's pretty spread out throughout the state. We are in Richmond, so it makes sense that we've got a little bit more activity in this general region, but not so much in the metropolitan city area. And here are a couple case studies that my team has been involved with. I don't actually know too much about NBS. This was before I came on, but that is in Univista, which I am pronouncing correctly. Univista, Virginia is a rural location that has had a lot of issues around people leaving, big employers leaving. They have a lot of empty space, and they're really trying to attract businesses. So we've been able to work closely with their economic development group and a few projects in particular to try to find them funding and investors. One of my favorite projects to talk about is actually in my hometown of Fredericksburg, Virginia. This is the Fredericksburg Food Co-op. They had an amazing local project sponsor who was just willing to do everything to make the deal happen, talk to the right people, just keep defending what needed to be done. We were able to work with him to set up an OZ fund, finding experts to help them find investors to create the materials in order to shop around the investment. And it was successfully funded. I've been into the co-op. It's beautiful. It's a community focused, sustainable business that I think really represents the type of projects we want to see. These are smaller and a little bit more niche, but Blueprint Local is a fund group. So they have several funds, and we've worked with them directly to introduce investors and help see some of their projects. Again, they are a little bit more urban, but they have interest in expanding to more rural areas. But in order to make that happen, we have to help them find shovel-ready projects that make sense for them to build up a portfolio here in Virginia. And that has been a challenge. And then we also get to work with some cool operating businesses. This is a company called Micronic, which is based out of Bristol, Virginia. And they're heading into their second round of big funding. They got their first round fully funded, mostly through OZ investment, but they have a water filtration technology and with a few good use studies around cheese. Actually, I didn't know this, but cheese production creates a lot of brine water. So that has environmental implications, and they're able to do some desalination, and there's a lot of, I think, potential uses of this technology. So I'm excited to see where they grow in the next couple of years. And with that, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but to share my contact information, I can share it out, but you can also reach out to me through the OZworks portal if you have any questions related to Virginia or not quite related to Virginia. and we'll see how we can all help each other make these things happen. Or if you have ideas to help me see more activity throughout the state, I would love to hear it. So that is it.
Thanks, Cara. I did want to ask you a little bit about sort of how this came about. And if you have a couple minutes, like, I mean, we've had discussions about and conversations about, like, where and why and how Opportunity Virginia was formed. But can you talk a little bit about, like, the inspiration behind it and maybe why it was started?
Yeah, definitely. So this was all the brainchild of my supervisor, Adam Northup. He is a VP at Locus Impact Investing. He came from Capital One. He worked for Capital One in commercial real estate, and he wanted to have a more relaxed lifestyle. So he joined a startup, which is a terrible choice, but at least now he's in Virginia instead of New York City. And he came in and he was working with the president of VCC at the time, Jane Henderson, and he was paying close attention, like a lot of us were, when the regulations were coming out, and there's sort of whispers of what this could do and how it could be used properly. And he started thinking about what could happen and how VCC and Locus could be involved, especially in alignment with the Locus and VCC missions of supporting, for VCC, that's mostly supporting rural Virginia throughout the state. And for Locus, that's seeing an increase in impact-oriented investment state or nationwide. So I think it was the sort of thing he started pitching and shopping around. He was talking to different people. I know he was in close communication with the group Opal from Alabama, Opportunity Alabama, and they had sort of similar ideas of how do we level this playing field to make it easier for people to use opportunity zones in the areas that really need them. And some of the early contacts in the state were, again, Virginia Department of Housing and DHCD, and they saw big needs around affordable housing and how this could align with what they were trying to do. And he was able to get support from the Governor Northam in Virginia, and there was a big press release that came out in the initial round of it. They were able to get $1 million grant to support the first 2 years, really heavy in community outreach. And here we are at about 2.5 years post that. They had a lot of different ideas of how this could be approached, but working with different stakeholders in the state, including those that could potentially fund us, this is where we ended up.
Yeah, it's so cool, and I think it could be an inspiration. You think about, like, statewide initiatives. Is there anything right now, particularly? I mean, you're looking for ways to support other, Virginia QOZBs and get them, in front of more capital, which is something that I'm going to be talking about later in this conversation, because I made a post about this today, and it's caught fire a little bit, which with good reason. So is there anything maybe that this group could support you with? Do you have, like, an ask for everybody other than to maybe just contact you and have a conversation? I mean, I'd like to be a little more focused than that whenever possible.
Yeah. Well, I've gotten to speak with a couple people. I got to talk to Kelvin this week, and he's got something going on in Virginia. So that's great. And in general, it is, again, we are Virginia focused. So if you're outside of the state of Virginia, but you're looking to get more involved with Virginia deals, that is a big one we'd love to hear about. And really, if you see yourself fitting into any part of our service group, whether it's project sponsor or investor or support system, I'm happy to have more contacts.